Joining me now to talk about a critical data issue that's very often overlooked is Matt Caywood. He is co-founder and CEO of Actionfigure. And I also have with me Tony Hudgins. He is Actionfigure's Senior Vice President of Partnerships and Strategy. So I want to thank you both for taking some time to talk with me now. Lay the groundwork for me, Matt. What is GTFS data? So first of all, what does that stand for, right? But what is it and why is it important?
GTFS is the general transit feed specification, but simply put, it's how you know that a bus or a shuttle or a train is available around you. And a lot of that data is schedule data. So you need to know when it's leaving and where it's going to be. But GTFS also includes real-time locations, estimated arrival times, increasingly other data like fares and costs of riding, and how to navigate even a train station or a bus terminal. So those are all parts of GTFS. And it's important because, you can't, this isn't 1930, you can't just post a timetable anymore. You have to reach people where they are, and people expect to find information about buses, but also even about, shuttles to and from their work on screens and on mobile devices. And if you don't produce the data, the fundamental data, which is GTFS, people won't be able to get that kind of information. So if you want your transit agency in Google Maps or Apple Maps, you need GTFS. If you want to provide a screen showing ETAs, if you want to have people plan a trip that involves your service, you have to have GTFS. And lastly, it's also required for compliance. As of a couple of years ago, it's part of the Federal Transit Administration's National Transit Database, or NTD, reporting.
That's really helpful. Data is a big issue for agencies in general, data overall. But when it comes to real-time transit data, why do agencies in particular struggle with that? So, Tony, what major challenges are they facing?
So they really face a couple of big challenges here. One is a technology challenge. The other is a labor challenge. Agencies typically are really operationally focused. They're focused on helping drivers understand when they need to be, where they need to be. They're focused on issues of, a bus or a shuttle is stuck on the side of the road and they need to figure out how to get another one up and running. They're really stuck, I think, in the minutia of running their services, and the ability to make sure that those services can be discovered takes a lot of time. It takes a person with a specific skill set that understands how to create GTFS, and then also how to actually do some pretty technical things that include making sure that there's an understanding not only of the schedule, but what happens from a turn-by-turn basis with respect to the relationship to the stops that the buses or shuttles are going to arrive at. And then it also needs to be hosted, as Matt said. So in the space that we're talking about, there's really a very large gap with respect to people in small to mid-sized agencies that have the ability to actually do all of this stuff in addition to their operational duties. So it's a little bit of a blind spot. Many of the people that we work with, they're probably IT people or they're operations people. They have no skill set for building GTFS. They don't know what to do with it afterwards. They're probably mostly familiar with just helping their drivers understand what road they need to be on and when they need to make turns to get to their next stop. So we're doing something that creates efficiencies, but also adds a technical skill set for an agency that they just typically don't have when they are small to midsize.
All this conversation about the real-time transit data is super complicated. So say that I'm an agency and I realize that I need to start using my GTFS data better, or maybe I need to start using it, right? So what best practices should I follow to do that? Are there challenges or just traps, pitfalls or traps that I should avoid?
I think the most important best practice is just committing to keep it maintained and to invest in either an in-house solution or a vendor relationship, which allows you to do that. Because if you get behind and put this as, we'll deal with this, when we change our schedule, and we're not changing our schedule, till maybe next year, you end up behind the eight ball, and you end up with data that's out of date, and customers who will be mad at you because the service isn't where they expect it to be. And those customers are going places like Google Maps, and they may not be able to find out about your service, or it might not be where they want it to be. So I think that really investing in planning in maintenance is the number one thing that folks have to do. And then, in terms of other best practices, there's a lot of tools out there that have made it easy to validate GTFS and make sure that it's good quality. Those tools are getting better every day, and I can talk about some cases where we were actually able to use agencies GTFS to help them with operational problems that they didn't even know they were going to have. So it can actually be very useful operationally as well to have the data around, because it's so ubiquitous now and it can be used for so many different applications.
And so many people rely on it. I mean, this is not something that goes under the radar or something. If you don't have this data or you have the wrong data, people know
I mean,
pretty
in some
fast
ways,
and they get upset.
if you don't have this data, you may not exist, right? I mean, that's really,
Yeah.
we're getting to that point where this is what people expect to find.
A lot of times the needs of large organizations differ from the needs of smaller ones. So when we're talking about GTFS data in particular, how do the needs of large transit agencies vary or compare to the needs of smaller ones, more local ones?
Yeah, I think for large agencies, GTFS is more of a process problem and more of an enterprise IT problem. They often have some tools that create the data or consume the data, but they have complex pipelines before they can deliver that data to the public or to services that serve the public. So it's really about creating and maintaining reliable processes, learning from industry best practices there, and then leveraging the internal capacity that they have to make sure that everyone's kind of pulling in the same direction. With small agencies, as Tony mentioned, it's often just a challenge of lacking the internal expertise or the dedicated staffing to support GTFS creation and maintenance. So a lot of smaller agencies just find that it's better to just work with a vendor or partner that can do that for them and work with their team.
So, Tony, Actionfigure has a real role to play in this space and in helping agencies. So, can you talk a little bit about how Actionfigure helps agencies, large ones, small ones, use real-time transit data? Like, what gaps do you guys fill?
Yeah, I would dovetail on what Matt said about the line of demarcation between large agencies and smaller agencies or small and mid-sized agencies. And I'll also zoom out a little bit in terms of who we are as a company. I think we've always been GTFS experts because at our core, what we really started doing when we were aggregating real-time transportation information for providing a product-based approach for displaying estimated arrivals for transportation information on our screens or in our mobile app or for the purposes of our trip planner, we were always consuming GTFS that was already created by large agencies. Large agencies didn't necessarily need our help in terms of creating it, but large agencies really needed our help disseminating it to the public at a more granular level. Literally think in building, right? The ability also to meet transportation demand management requirements where the local agencies or the local agencies working with the local governments wanted to make sure that transportation information was available in a more consumable way rather than just, the old days where it was, schedule on a piece of paper or a schedule on a map in a building. We were really kind of at the forefront of making it dynamic, making it site specific, and making it distributed across a mobile product. So that was where we were helping agencies almost in an indirect fashion, but where we're moving forward, and Matt will talk about this a little bit later, is also giving agencies deeper ways to actually include more information in GTFS, make it more powerful, make it more useful with respect to the other things that they can do with it. GTFS Pathways is one of those newer things that we're working on and servicing the large agencies with. But the small agencies, the line of demarcation is really just getting GTFS at all.
Yeah, so we're the only company, I think, in the world that goes from the data creation stage of GTFS hand in hand with the agency all the way to displaying it on mobile or screens. So really that whole, end-to-end process from where it gets created inside the agency to where it gets seen by a passenger or customer. And that makes us unique because we really think about the whole pathway and making sure that the end product is what it needs to be. They're large. Google Maps won't work with your agency that way, right? But we will, and we're the only company that can work through the whole pipeline, and that makes us very unique in the space.
Now, can you share a use case or a case study that sort of demonstrates what's possible for folks?
Yeah, I think I'll talk about it at a high level, and then Matt can talk about it at a more granular level. But one of the better examples, I think, is our partnership that we have with a very large shuttle tech company that really basically provides real-time GTFS. But in order to support their customers with real-time GTFS, they need GTFS static to be built. So that's effectively what we do. So really their product as an offering from a software perspective, it won't work without GTFS being built, particularly for small and mid-sized agencies. And those I would also include are not just regional transit agencies. Those are universities. Those are healthcare institutions that have large shuttle operations. Those are shuttle providers that are actually doing events as a regular course of what they do for their business. If they can't make their information discoverable and therefore also available from a real-time perspective with our partner, the partner actually cannot service them.
Yeah. So as an example, we've worked with a small agency, a rural transit agency that had 5 routes, 7 vehicles, and they had GTFS data, but it was outdated, and they didn't know how to bring it, up to their current schedule, much less to the next schedule that they were planning to roll out. So it needed to be rebuilt from sort of scratch, from the turn sheets that the drivers were taking, turn left at this stop, turn right at this stop. And so we worked with them hand in hand to deliver the data and make all the updates. And we were even able to use the data to identify issues with the planned schedule before it was even rolled out. So we found out from analyzing the GTFS that the buses were not going to be able to physically make some of the time points that some of the were planned on the schedule. So we went back and worked with them and got that all fixed before the schedule was rolled out. So, very, very happy to be able to solve a problem working with an agency like that, and also make sure that their customers were satisfied with the service and with the accuracy of the schedule that they were being informed about.
I love this conversation, but I have now, Matt, like maybe the hardest question of this entire conversation. If you had only 2 takeaways that you could leave with our audience, what 2 things would you want them to walk away knowing?
Your customers matter, and your customers are not going to be able to discover your transportation service without GTFS. It's really that simple. And so if you want riders to find your service on mobile apps, on displays, on your web trip planner, you need GTFS, and you need to make sure that it's current and accurate.
Are there any other
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Are there any other comments that you want to get to, things you didn't get an opportunity to point you didn't get a chance to make? If not, that's okay.
Well, we're very excited about the future of transit data and GTFS. And so there are certain, new features that are coming out, the ability to tell customers about service updates, about detours, about alerts, and have that directly, inform them via mobile or screen. That's going to be really important. And people are going to be expecting that in the near future. So that's can also be done through GTFS. And then, you're talking about folks who have accessibility needs, which transit serves, heavily. GTFS is also the foundation for accessible transportation, and in particular with tools like GTFS pathways. If you have people navigating a large transit station, we have tools that can enable that in ways that can reach really universally everybody who needs to be able to navigate these systems, but also improving the lives of accessible users of the transit system. So this is all possible with data, and we're really excited to work with agencies and help them understand what the future of digital communications in transportation is.
Thank you so much for joining me today, both of you. I really enjoyed this conversation. I think, transit information is so important that people expect it, but I don't think people really pay attention to what happens behind the scenes to be able to get it, to be able to take that shuttle on time, like you've been talking about. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Candace.
Thank you.